And we continue at 2:06 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show, broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. Mr. Randy Wings at the sports desk in Culver City.
John, California's three Democratic Senate candidates, Adam Schiff, Katie Porter, and Barbara Lee, were in San Diego County over the weekend making their pitch to union workers, where Adam Schiff tried to go full Mother Goose.
I value the work that you do, and I am proud to fight for you.
Does Karen Bass have a response to that?
If you're feeling down, if you're feeling blue, let's get help for you.
Actually, you know what? That was really more of a Garcetti one.
Just be smart and stay apart.
I'm telling you, it's part of the job description.
You give us the supply, we'll meet the need by July.
Watch out, Dr. Seuss. He's coming for you.
I receive things on both ends.
You know, I think Dr. Seuss went to med school with Dr. Jill. And Dr. Ferrer. 800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is a pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is a former congressman representing the great state of Florida, Congressman Mark Foley. Welcome.
We need a good laugh about now. We're having a tough time in the world, John Phillips.
Yeah, no kidding. I'll tell you, I don't know what it is right now about the House of Representatives, but they're having a hard time counting votes. I don't know if they need an abacus. I don't know if they need a calculator. I don't know if they need a whiteboard and markers. But they're having a tough time getting to a majority in the House for a speaker.
May require a Ouija board. They may have to. No, it's amazing to watch. It's sad to watch. You and I talked about this 2 weeks ago when Matt Gaetz succeeded in removing Kevin. And, you know, the chaos that's ensued since has been really a sad chapter in Republican history. We could lose the majority with this kind of antics because we can't even govern with the majority, and with the majority and the minority and the majority fighting each other. I think this protracted speakers contest will come to rue the day and cause us incalculable problems. I mean, Democrats actually look like they're governing now, opposed to what we're doing. So it's tough to watch, John.
You know, when Nancy Pelosi was Speaker, what she would do is she would never even allow a vote to take place unless she knew the result was one that she favored. And she knew where the votes were. It seems like now what they're doing is no one knows where the votes are. They're voting blindly, and they're not getting the results that they want.
Exactly. I mean, what they are trying to do is throw spaghetti on the wall to see if it's cooked, and that's not the way you govern. We always would say if it passed the Rules Committee the night before, then it was going to the floor and would have a vote, because it didn't even get to the Rules Committee before we knew. We, number one, had the votes in the committee, but we also had the votes to deliver a victory on the floor. This is shambolic, watching this happen, because if Kevin McCarthy couldn't remain Speaker, what makes anyone think Scalise was going to win or Jim Jordan? Each of those people have their own sets of enemies inside the conference. I will tell your listeners that there are probably not more moderates in the conference than far right, but there is a significant number of people that come from districts that have to perform in order to get reelected. They're not guaranteed their seats. They have to fight for them every 2 years against a primary opponent, which these types of fights can deliver a primary opponent, or a general election opponent. You have to kind of be ready to defend your seat because you're in a marginal district that can swing either direction depending on the presidential election. We've seen that last year. And ironically, in New York, a number of seats that were held by Democrats actually went to Republicans in a year that Biden was doing well. So the antics today in trying to bring the House to a final vote And I think if they had the votes today, they probably would have pushed it on the floor this evening. But obviously they don't. He's still trying to cajole people. But what I did hear recently in the last hour is that he was now threatening people in the caucus. And the one thing you can't do is threaten somebody with idle banter. You can't threaten their vote because that pushes them further outside your wheelhouse. So if it occurs tomorrow, if he's successful, we can probably expect a short-lived speakership, just like Kevin McCarthy, because I think bringing these disparate issues and sets of individuals together for the good of the order is impossible. It is virtually impossible.
Yeah, you can't threaten to send someone to hell unless you have the power to put them there. And I don't necessarily think that he has the power to put any of them there right now because the situation is exactly as you described. If he is able to cobble together the votes that he's going to need, it's going to be by a razor-thin margin. And the moment he falls out of favor with just a couple of them, then he's done too. Now, one of the things that we see happen over and over and over again, not just in races for Congress, but we see it for mayor, for governor, for president, you name it. No one wants to run as a seasoned, experienced politician. Everyone, including incumbents, like to portray themselves as the outsider. I'm the outsider who's bringing a fresh perspective, and I'm going to change the way that business is done. I'm not part of the swamp. However, you know and I know that there are certain vocational qualities that one needs to have to be successful at this. You cannot be a successful legislator. You cannot be a successful politician unless you can deliver a speech, pick up the phone and ask people for money, understand at least a certain degree of the parliamentary procedures, get along with your colleagues enough to get them to vote for legislation that you support, that sort of thing. And it seems like with this Congress in particular, there are a lot of people who just don't have those qualities. They don't understand the job that they're supposed to be doing, and they don't care to learn it. You have people like Lauren Boebert from the state of Colorado, who prior to coming to Congress owned a competitor to Hooters. And I think she has a GED, although I'm not entirely sure, and was a grandmother at the age of 36. You look at George Santos. That guy is essentially not just a criminal, but a petty criminal. I mean, this guy is like a street thug. He's not even a white-collar criminal. He's a guy who you know, probably should have been in prison a long time ago. And you say to yourself, oh, my God, these people not only don't know that they're incapable of doing the job, but they're totally hopeless. They can't even be taken under someone else's wing who does know, and they can just say, shut up and do this, because they're too stupid to even figure that out.
Absolutely. And that's, again, if you looked at a race that was a setup for a victory of a candidate and you followed it closely, Rick Caruso should have been mayor of Los Angeles. But he didn't have that necessary skill sets of checking all the boxes. He was successful. He was a developer. There was crime. He had an answer for it. He had all the right things, but he missed that critical spot of knowing where all of the demography is in order to pick up enough votes within each subset of voters in order to win a victory. The speaker has that same universal population. He has to go around and say, okay, Foley's from 16th District, Florida. He has wealthy, but oh, by the way, he has the largest sugarcane growers in the country. So he's got farmers. Oh, and by the way, he's got the intercoastal waterways. So he has clean water activists. So, you know, you have to look at all of the various things that influence a member's district. Lauren Boebert wouldn't know my district unless it was a shooting range. She'd say, oh, if they have a shooting range, I'll go visit. You know, some of these people only see blindly what they think they were sent there for. Many of them fail after time. The novelty wears off, and people realize they can't connect the dots. They can't get things funded for their districts because they don't work well with others. We've got Liz Cheney belly aching about Jim Jordan being at the center of the January 6th efforts of Trump. And so she's trying to say he knew everything. And if he was forced to tell the truth, he would be disqualified to be speaker. So not only are we fighting internally, we're fighting former members that are firing into the room with stray bullets to try and dethrone his efforts to be speaker. That's why this is a cataclysmic event. And meanwhile, Democrats sit on the sidelines gleefully saying, and can say so with some certainty, that the House is in turmoil, but it's the Republicans. So to govern requires members like myself to take tough votes that may not be perfect for their districts. But usually those of us that have done this job long enough can fully explain the rationale for our vote to our constituents to avoid political peril. In these cases, and you mentioned Santos, I am stunned with the latest indictment. Menendez, his latest indictment. That's what's running the ruling class. They're either so old and feeble, God rest Dianne Feinstein, but we discussed that on your show as well. It's time for some of these people to leave the stage, not necessarily through death, but through retirement. So younger, able-bodied thinkers representing a broader generational shift running the Congress. Now, Jim Jordan is a young man. He's a wrestling star, I guess, from Ohio. But wrestling stars don't make good politicians. He does fight the good fight for the rock rib conservatives, but governing is more than just, being on one side of the team, trying to weigh in on that critical issue of keeping your conservative flank tight. You got to say at some point, voters in 435 districts are not monolithically aligned to any party. And that is when it takes true discipline to discuss the issues that face us. Israel looks like it brought us together for about an hour, but then we look as chaotic as they are right now in all of the war efforts. I've never seen, John, the world in more peril. And I warn our audience listening today, much like 9/11, these things happen quickly, without notice, and without warning. And I worry that there are sleeper cells coming in through the southern border, not just Mexicans, Guatemalans, Nicaraguans coming in. There are Chinese agents. There are Hamas. There are ISIS members. There are MS-13 members coming through the border. So we're at a point, an inflection point in our country, and Biden's allowed that open border to prosper, not just to be infiltrated, but prosper. And I think the setup in Hamas over this past 2 weeks was planned long ago and will continue to seek opportunities around the globe, whether it be Paris, London, Chicago, Los Angeles, Miami. And the FBI's warned very, very dramatically that we all have to be on guard because they may actually be in places like Asheville, North Carolina, where I sit today, or Palm Beach, Florida, where I'll be next month. So we find ourselves in a vexing time, and watching the House leadership race is a canard and a sad commentary on the party's opportunity to govern this nation, and it makes me angry.
Given everything that's going on in the world, given Russia being in Ukraine, what happened with the terrorist attacks against the state of Israel, do you worry that China is watching all of this right now and saying to itself, if we ever want to go to Taiwan, we're never going to find a moment like this ever again?
John, there's only a couple fights we can have. The U.S. military power has always been peace through strength and ability to project ourselves as warriors and able to conquer every crisis. But much like our exit from Afghanistan, we see we can't even leave carefully and safely. And we have 13 Marines killed on the departure. And so if you see China, and I know this for a fact watching China, Russia, North Korea cozying up with Iran, those four sub-powerful countries individually become extraordinarily powerful. And China striking Taiwan, I can promise your audience, I don't believe, knowing what I think I know about our capabilities, would we have the power to be engaged and deeply embedded in Israel, trying to help in, Ukraine, and then being ordered to participate in a protection of Taiwan. I just don't see all those things coming together. China knows it. Russia knows it. That's why Putin's been so relaxed while he loses people, loses positions, kind of at a stalemate in Ukraine. He knows at any given moment we could have a cataclysmic event like Taiwan come up, and all of a sudden we'll be diverted and our attention span will be muted, and we will find ourselves in the colossal, not World War III. I'm not ready to predict that yet, but trust me, the hostilities that are brewing around the globe, the sentiment against the U.S., the insurgence, if you will, of China's interest to be the predominant powerful force in the globe has me very concerned, because they spent the last decades ramping up operations in Latin America, in the Bahamas, buying supply chains, buying ports, buying railroads, buying shipping containers, buying the rights to minerals. So they've virtually completed their entire matrix of how to be the most powerful nation in the world, including the lithium supplies that are required to do Biden's Green New Deal, but also have the manpower and munitions to fight a very, very competitive battle against us. And Katie, by the door, if things continue to light up in the Middle East, we could find ourselves in a real world of hurt.
Congressman Mark Foley, former member of the United States House of Representatives, representing the great state of Florida. Thanks so much for stopping by. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, John.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, we're getting a lot of emails about my eulogy for Suzanne Summers. If you missed that eulogy, which happened the first hour of today's show, you can go back to the podcast and listen to it there.
That's right. I just posted it. So go to KABC.com, click on podcasts, go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. Or the easiest way, download the brand new KABC app. Just search KABC AM in the Apple App Store or the Android Store. It's the most convenient way to listen live to the station whenever you're outside the AM radio listening area. And it's the easiest way to listen to podcasts of the show. It even works with CarPlay, so download the KABC app.
In the meantime, what do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
Well, let's do that right now. 790 KABC welcomes The Nightmare Before Christmas live in concert at the Hollywood Bowl on October 29th. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com, but right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-790-5222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by Live Nation. Good luck dialing.
Well, it's been a stressful year for a lot of people, Randy. And people are looking for different ways to decompress from the stresses of everyday life. And one of the ways that people can de-stress, if they need to, is to have a nice spa day. Get a massage, maybe a facial, get a nice haircut, that sort of thing. But in San Francisco, the city government in that city and county has a different spin on what a spa day might involve.
That's right. It's called a sobering center. It costs 5 times as much to put a drug addict in there as it does to put someone in drug treatment where they're actually withdrawing from the drugs. And you don't have to get off the drugs. But if you're high as a kite in San Francisco, you can show up, get a meal, take a shower, hang out, do whatever you'd like, and then you don't have to get any treatment. And we're paying for it.
Do you get cucumbers for your eyes?
Well, let's find out. Here is just how insane it is if you actually are trying to get someone help in the city of San Francisco. It's a report from KGO.
San Francisco's mayor recently argued that it's easier to access drugs than treatment. Facing the worst drug crisis in the city's history, the mayor has said no more handouts without mandatory treatment.
ABC 7 News reporter Leanne Melendez is here to tell us that in reality, it can really be challenging to offer treatment without the necessary staff and beds.
Yeah, where's the staff? You know, and we need more beds, and they're not being filled really, and they're so very necessary. We need that treatment because when it comes to the drugs that are out on the streets, fentanyl is perhaps the hardest one to get off. Now, 2 weeks ago, the mayor said that 80 people were approached and asked if they wanted treatment on demand, and only one person said yes.
1 out of 80.
Quite the success rate when it's voluntary.
That's all right? That's all right?
It's noon in the Tenderloin. San Francisco police do a wellness check of this couple apparently unresponsive. A young man finally emerges, but there's concern that his partner may need help.
Here, give me my papers.
What?
It was hard to make that last comment out.
Give me my papers.
Give me my papers?
Well, is she planning on traveling anytime soon and she wants her passport back?
Maybe she thought the police officer who revived her was trying to steal her copy of the Chronicle.
Police eventually leave after she refuses to request assistance from a street crisis team. For years, treatment for drug users and those needing mental health care has been the focus of conversation among city officials.
Our goal, as I said, is consistently to get people into treatment and support that they need.
Let's focus on first recovery.
And they're the ones who are most at risk for fatal overdoses. We should be doing everything we can.
Except that where are they planning to house all these people who need treatment? And how is the city able to afford the care that they need?
This is the Harbor Light Withdrawal Management Program. There's a total of 40 beds.
Of the 40 beds, 10 are funded by the San Francisco Health Department and 5 by the Adult Probation Department. Their community partners sponsor another 5. That leaves 20 empty beds.
There are 20 empty beds that the county can't afford to pay for. And just wait till you find out what they're paying for instead.
How could they not figure out a way to pay for it? That's one of the richest cities in the country.
Whenever you're hearing we need more beds, we need more facilities, there are facilities that have open beds, but the cities and counties are not paying for them because they've got all this public health money that's supposed to go towards treatment to things like meth pipes and sobering centers.
That leaves 20 empty beds.
So you're saying that there are 40 beds here and the health department funds only 10 when they could be funding more?
Correct. We have.
Why don't they?
It's a good question.
The same question that Supervisor Catherine Stephanie asked the health department during a recent hearing.
And I'm just wondering, I know that there's 20 uncontracted withdrawal management beds at Harbor Light, and wondering if DPH has considered purchasing those.
I think we're looking at multiple options, including that.
I wonder how much San Francisco gives to pass out free meth pipes and needles.
See, this is what they're doing. They're focused on passing out the pipes and the needles and the Narcan, and they're not focusing their time, energy, and money on fixing the problem.
You're going to spend money on things like a linkage center, which is a safe consumption site. That's money you are taking away from the budget that could be going towards getting people off the drugs. Instead, you're prolonging addiction and paying for it.
They are admittedly waving the white flag, and all they want to do is try to mitigate the damage.
According to Harbor Light, if the health department were to fund those 20 extra beds, there would also be extra revenue to hire more staff to meet the demand for care. Kind of like the chicken and the egg.
People love using that phrase lately.
Especially the mayor.
As of today, those 20 beds are not being used. It's a citywide problem.
Not enough of the right kind of places for people, and then not enough of the right kind of staff to staff those places.
I think we should definitely fund the beds at Harbor Light. There's definitely a need for it. When you look at our overdose death rates, they're just getting worse.
On the other hand, the health department has invested in the only substance use sobering center in San Francisco called Soma Rise.
It already sounds like a spa.
Soma Rise. Can you imagine the spa music that's playing in the background there as you drink your orange-infused water?
And then after you take a sip, you say your mantra.
I love heroin.
Coincidentally, the number of beds available there is 20. Soma Rise is operated by the nonprofit Health Right 360 with a $7.4 million budget over 2 years, which means that each bed, whether occupied or not, ends up costing $506 a day.
That is quite the expensive hotel.
$506 a day for a bed at one of these facilities?
And that's whether it's used or not. Meanwhile, how much is the treatment facility with the withdrawal bed getting that they can't afford to buy all 20 beds?
Harbor Light points out that each bed in their withdrawal management program operated by the Salvation Army costs the city $110 a day.
They work.
So they could easily fund treatment and have enough beds for everybody, but we're going to put all this money in this more expensive option that doesn't do anything.
What does a room cost at the Ritz-Carlton?
Is it still in business?
They work hand in hand, but they're not the same.
The health department has a point. Harbor Light takes in people who have already made the decision to get clean, and they support them through that rough period, while Soma Rise only serves people who are using drugs the moment they walk through that door.
You must be this high to enter?
That is quite a requirement.
All right, so what is a sobering center?
So let's be clear. They are not here to seek treatment.
Some folks come in to seek treatment, but I will tell you, because this is such a low barrier program, most folks that are coming here initially are just looking for a safe place to rest, to sort of stabilize from their drug use, take a break, a pause in their day, their routine.
We were invited in.
In case you need a vacation from the sidewalk.
So you can do your drugs, go in there, sleep it off, and then go back out and do more drugs. And they know that that's the purpose for this facility, and they're fine with it, and they keep funding it.
$500 a bed a night.
We were invited inside, but with the condition that we not take any video of the patients, something we would never do. Instead, they provided us with some of their photos. At Soma Rise, a medical technician is there to make an initial health assessment. They are then fed, offered a warm shower, and a chance to sleep it off.
Why would I take this over withdrawal, which sounds horrible?
Why are we spending 1 cent on this?
Well, again, this costs 5 times as much as actual withdrawal management, actual treatment, and we're not funding that because we're spending money on this.
While being monitored in case of a possible overdose, patients are only allowed to stay for 24 hours. At that point, they can ask for help to get into treatment. Otherwise, they are back on the streets.
What's the point?
There is no point.
Nothing is mandated, and nothing comes with conditions.
So make the argument, if you did not exist, what would happen to the people who are using drugs out here?
Well, they'd be in isolation in alleyways, they'd be on the streets, they'd be on the sidewalks, and they'd be in crisis from their substance use.
Yes, but they're already doing that, and they're dying like crazy, so your service is doing nothing, but you're fleecing the taxpayer for $500 a night per bed.
Someone in the top levels of the administration of this program has to be politically connected. There's no other explanation.
The health department also makes the argument that the cost per bed is much lower than if they were to end up in the emergency room.
Well, obviously, but it would be also much cheaper to fully fund actual treatment instead of this nonsense.
And if they're high on drugs and they're overdosing in the facility, they're still going to go to the ER. It's not like you're going to take them to some other facility.
We know emergency rooms are extremely expensive and makes it difficult for other people to access care.
They say from January to June of this year, they have referred 250 patients to a withdrawal management treatment program and 90 people to off-site residential treatment centers. Meanwhile, Harbor Light allows patients to transition from the withdrawal management program to residential treatment right there on site.
You mean because it's an actual treatment facility, unlike the spa that they're paying 5 times for?
Can you imagine going to a meth spa?
I really can't.
So they can literally show up to our door, ring the bell, come into our withdrawal management program, stabilize for a couple of days, and then transition into long-term care at our residential treatment program on this campus.
There we were in.
That's the one we're not paying for. That's the one we said, no, we don't want to fully fund that. Let's take this more expensive option that doesn't treat people's addictions.
You know, Randy, it's almost as if they haven't thought this through.
There we were invited to meet Zach Wolf, a recovering fentanyl addict who says he was once ready to take his own life.
I went out and stole a bunch of stuff from a store, and I was going to use that to fund the money to overdose and kill myself. As I'm going to sell my stuff, I get arrested because I had a warrant for missing court. And I kind of see that as divine intervention. And God was doing for me what I couldn't do for myself, which was put the drugs down.
I have heard that story so many times from so many people, how getting arrested saved their life.
And they want to eliminate that as a possibility for them.
He's been sober for 9 months. Another outspoken supporter of so-called mandated treatment is Tom Wolf.
I was already in jail facing accountability for the crimes that I was committing, and then I was given an option to go to treatment as a way to get out of jail.
What's it going to take in San Francisco for this not to exist?
That's a good question. I don't have an answer for that. Only because I have done so many tours here. I've seen the data. I think...
we've got a big problem.
We've got a huge problem. In fact, I would ask, what's it going to take for San Francisco to continue opening more of these programs?
Now, keep in mind that San Francisco is currently spending $650 million a year to fund these health programs.
Yeah, and how much of it are the actual health programs and how much of it are nonsense?
And here's the thing. If you oppose spending money on these worthless programs that do nothing but enable bad and suicidal behavior, they will tell you you're not compassionate.